Welcome back everyone. Today we're going over a quick recipe of how to use leftovers from either your frosted mini wheats or in this case we have mini spooners. So we've all been there if you have this kind of cereal that you get to the bottom and it still feels fairly full and lo and behold it's all crumbs. So rather than continue to throw these away, we're going to make some cookies that use these today so we can have a yummy snack and not waste the rest of our cereal. So we'll go ahead and get started by taking 2 3/4 cup of this with a 1/2 cup of chocolate chips. I'm not going to show this because we're going to put it in our food processor here just to kind of blend it up. If you don't have a food processor, you could try putting it in the blender or just trying to chop it up really finely because we don't want big chunks of the spooners if there's any left in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and we'll meet back here. Alright, so we blended up our mini wheats and our chocolate chips. You can kind of see here. Try and get it as fine as possible. We didn't have quite 2 3/4 cups, so we had about 2 cups of the mini wheats, so we'll see how that turns out. Now I'm going to cream 1 cup of butter, or in our case we're actually using margarine just because it's a lot cheaper. I know it doesn't quite taste the same, but when we're adding this much sugar, you're not going to notice that. So typically if you're using regular mini wheats, you do 1 cup regular sugar, 1 cup brown sugar. We're going a little bit light, if you can kind of see here. I didn't fill it all the way just because we did use frosted mini spooners. So we don't want it to get overly sweet, so we're still doing most of it, but not quite all of it. So we'll do 1 cup of regular sugar and then 1 cup of brown sugar, and like I said, I'm going light on those just because we're using frosted ones. So we're just going a little bit light on that. But then we will go ahead and cream those together, and then we'll continue adding ingredients. Hopefully you're not making a mess as much as I am, spilling sugar all over the place. And you'll want to make sure you do this before you add anything else. It does make a big difference. Heard them say on the Great British Baking Show this might make the biggest difference at all in a recipe, is if you don't cream your sugar and butter all together. Which I usually don't, so I shouldn't talk about that, but another thing that I like about margarine is if you keep your butter or margarine in the fridge, it seems to cream together a lot faster. You don't have to try and warm it up or remember to bring it to room temperature before you start baking. Whereas typically butter, you will need to keep that room temperature for quite some time before you can start baking with it. So be sure you get all of the chunks of sugar out of there. Brown sugar is notorious for clumping. So you just want to keep mixing this really well until it just kind of looks fluffy, and this one will be a little bit brownish, beige I should say, with the brown sugar and white sugar mixed in. So now you can see we've got kind of a nice fluffy butter cream thing going on here. Again, it's a little bit runnier than regular butter, so it's not quite the same, but it'll get us close enough. So now that we have that, we're going to add in 2 eggs as well as our vanilla. And it'll be 2 large eggs, and then it calls for 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Since we are using imitation vanilla here, I'm just going to go ahead and pour some in. A lot of times I don't measure the vanilla. I don't know if you can really have too much. I think it just evaporates while it's baking otherwise, but I love the vanilla flavor, so we're going to add plenty of that in. And again, mix this quite well. Alright, now once we have this all mixed up, we're going to go ahead and add our flour in. Which we will need 2 cups of flour. So we're using an all-purpose flour. That's probably your best bet, but if you have something else that you're trying to use up, cookies are a good spot to use that because you don't need to worry about the rising or the anything like that. The whole wheat flour, it might be a little bit goofy, it might be a little bit dry, but if that is all you have on hand, I would definitely go ahead and make it anyway if you're trying to use it up. So I'll mix in our flour here. We'll also add in, I'm just going to add it in right away to try and get it better mixed in. We have baking powder, which you'll need 1 teaspoon, and as well as 1 teaspoon of our baking soda and half a teaspoon of salt. Get our baking powder in, got our baking soda in. Get some of this out of the way here. And then we will go ahead and add in our salt here. So we actually have canning salt left over, so we're using that today, but it's basically the same thing, it's just a little bit finer. So do half a teaspoon of that. Alright, and then after we get this all mixed up, we'll go ahead and add our mini wheats mixture. I just want to keep mixing and scraping the sides, make sure we get all of that in there. And during this time, ideally you'll be preheating your oven to about 350. And then we'll be baking these just on a typical cookie sheet, whatever fits best in your oven. I would recommend lightly greasing it or putting something like tin foil down just to help with the cookies not sticking so much. And you can do that by either using your margarine or your butter and just wiping it down, or you could use something like Pam or olive oil, coconut oil, whatever you prefer and have on hand. So now we kind of got a nice consistent mixture here. We'll go ahead and put our mini wheats mixture in here. Continue mixing a little bit more. And then our final thing that we'll be doing with this before we get them on the cookie sheet is we'll be adding some more chocolate chips. So we did half a cup in the blender, and now you can do, depending on how chocolatey you like them, anywhere from another half a cup to a cup and a half if you want them really more like chocolate chip cookies, like chunky chocolate chip. So this does get quite thick, you can see here. We're going to go ahead and add in the rest of our chocolate chips here. We're doing about a cup. That's just what comes out of the bag that we have. So we're going to play it by ear with what you have. But we'll add those in, and then you'll just want to drop these about 1 spoonful at a time. You know, about this big, like a tablespoon, or the larger spoon you have in your silverware set. And you'll drop those 1 spoonful at a time onto a cookie sheet and bake them about 8 to 12 minutes. Obviously this will depend on your oven. Not all ovens are true to temperature. So I would start at about 7 minutes checking them, and then just check every minute or two until they're slightly brown on top. And I mean, you can poke them with the toothpick, make sure they're not runny. Otherwise, they'll bake like normal cookies, and cool them before you eat them. And hopefully you enjoy this and enjoy not wasting your cereal leftovers like we do. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to check back later for more recipes. If you'd like a printout of this recipe, head over to the blog. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks, and have a great day.